Hello and welcome everybody to my talk. The title of my talk is A Computational Explanation for the Unreasonable Human Ability to Detect Faces and Things. This work is done by me and my supervisor, Katharina Dobbs. In this talk, I'll be linking face perception to face pareidolia with the help of computational models. And the computational model that I've been using is deep learning. I would first like to introduce the functional specialization in brain. We have functional specialization in brain for specific natural stimuli categories, but not for others. This was found by Nancy Canusha in 2000. Next is the computational similarity of brains and machines. What was found by Danny Yeomans and his team in 2016 is that there is significant representational similarity between hierarchical convolutional neural networks with the human visual system. The representations that are formed as the image passes through the convolutional neural network are significantly similar to the representations that are formed as the image passes through the human visual system. Using these two introductory remarks, I would like to present a hypothesis whether a computational model that is trained on faces and objects using these two categories would pareidolia emerge in a network that is trained on face and object recognition? And the second question that we would like to answer is that would the emergent pareidolia be consistent with neural MEG data that suggests rapid face pareidolia processing in humans? This was found by Wardle et al. Recently in 2020, and they found a rapid around 160 millisecond response to face pareidolia. If I have to present it schematically, we could say that in the earlier layers of a network, we would find a significant overlap in the representations of faces and objects, whereas in the later layers, we would find that these two representations diverge from one another and faces are separately processed than objects. In the early layers, this significant overlap would result in the formation of pareidolia. In order to choose the correct model, we have many choices. We take 3 CNNs. The first CNN is the face CNN, which is just trained on VGG faces. The second CNN is the object CNN, which is trained on categories of ImageNet and same number of images. The third network is the dual task CNN, which is trained on both these categories, so both faces and objects. We use the dual task CNN model with VGG16 architecture that is trained on both face and object datasets. Now, why exactly do we use the dual task CNN? It's because the dual task CNN achieves the same accuracy as the individually trained face and object CNNs. Here we see that the dual task CNN gets the same test performance as the face and object CNNs that are individually trained. This makes dual task a good candidate. The second reason why we choose dual task CNN is because the human face behavior is explained by the dual task CNN. We have the object CNN, the face CNN, and the dual task CNN, but the dual task CNN explains both the face behavior as well as the object recognition human behavior. Here, I've only shown the face behavior because we found a particularly interesting property that was displayed here in the face behavior part. We found that the dual task CNN aligns with the object CNN in early layers while correlating with human face recognition behavior. In the earlier layers, we found that the dual task CNN, instead of aligning with the face CNN, it aligns with the object during a face behavior task. That was one of our clues we used in order to see that this model would further result in pareidolia. The stimulus set that we use is the same stimulus set that is used by Wardle et al. In the neural MEG study of face pareidolia in order to maintain maximum possible consistency. This stimulus consists of 32 face images, 32 object images, and 32 pareidolia images. The object images and the pareidolia images are chosen such that there is a semantic consistency between object and pareidolia images. We find that, for example, the chair is similar to the chair here. This coherency is maintained. The analysis procedure is such that, for example, I have shown the VGG16. This is a schematic of the VGG16, and it's called VGG16 because it has 16 layers. This is the architecture of the dual task CNN that is trained on faces as well as objects. We take the pre-trained network and we pass these 96 stimuli through the network and then extract the required activations from the selected layers and perform specific operations on them, for example, t-SNE and other operations. First operation that I would like to state here is the dimensionality reduction operation. We take the extracted layers. This would be the layer 4 activation tensor, and these are the separate images. A tensor has a depth, length, and breadth. This would be the dimension of the tensors. There are 96 images, and each of them have 128 by 112 by 112. We unroll them to form a vector and combine all image vectors to form a matrix. This becomes a pretty high dimensional matrix. This is just a representation here. And finally, we reduce the dimensionality using t-SNE. Now it becomes a dimensional matrix. Using dimensionality reduction, we get this answer. Pareidolia are more similar to faces than matched objects. And then faces are separate from pareidolia and objects. As we move from layer 3 to this would be the evolution of the dual task layer. Activations, t-SNE plots as each stimulus passes through the model. The next is the dimensionality reduction or the neural MEG data. We find that the same process happening in the neural MEG data. We find the pareidolia are more similar to faces than matched objects, and faces separate from pareidolia and objects at the later. Then we have the representational dissimilarity matrix. We do the same methods again, and we unroll the vector. We calculate the inner matrix product. This inner matrix product is subtracted from 1 to generate the RDM. The RDM that is generated, represented here, faces separate from pareidolia and objects. Here you can see that faces become more similar and objects become more similar, but in the earlier cases, it's not true. Now we do the representational similarity analysis. We take the RDMs for calculating the row value. We take 2 RDMs here. We unroll the upper triangle into a vector, and then we calculate the Spearman R correlation between the 2 vectors. This gives us the measure of similarity between the representational spaces in the RDMs of CNN layer and the different hypotheses. And we have the idealized RDM hypothesis. Idealized RDM hypothesis are that faces and pareidolia are equal, and pareidolia is equal to objects, and faces are equal to objects. So using these 3 idealized RDM hypotheses, we calculate the final results. This would be the partial correlation values of layer RDMs with the 3 idealized hypothesis RDMs. Here we see that the faces become equal to pareidolia in blue, and then pareidolia becoming equal to objects in orange. In the earlier layers, you can see that there is a higher correlation between faces and pareidolia, and it goes up, but it doesn't go as high as pareidolia becoming equal to objects in the later layers. In the earlier layers, the pareidolia is not equal to objects as much. It kind of looks like this. The faces and pareidolia representational spaces are more similar as compared to objects and pareidolia, but in the later layers, the pareidolia and object become closer as compared to faces. We found that the computational model of object-of-face functional specialization does indeed hold, and the pareidolia does emerge in the network, and it is consistent with the neural MEG pareidolia processing in humans. The conclusion is that there is an emergent branching for detecting faces versus objects, and there is a progression from coarse to fine-grained classification in dual task layers. There is a coarse-grained classification, and in the later layers, these different classes separate from one another. There is an emergence of coarse face detection mechanism in early layers of a dual task CNN, which provides a computational explanation for the unreasoned human ability to detect faces and things. For the future work, we had experience in architecture and what role it plays for this crossover point. We have generality work in progress where we like to formulate how much the image is face-like. And finally, we have the spatial and temporal alignment of model in the neuroscience part. Thank you very much.